Hi, I'm Eliane Sainte-Marie of Parenting for Wholeness, and I work primarily with highly sensitive moms, many of who've experienced trauma, whether they realize it or not. A lot of them actually from childhood emotional neglect. So it's not so much what happened to them, but what didn't happen to them, and who, because of that, the mixture of being highly sensitive and having experienced trauma or emotional neglect, really, really struggle in life and don't understand why. And I was one of those. And I eventually, from not knowing how to deal with my trauma, developed CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, and started learning a lot more about the nervous system and when cell danger response gets activated. And then I kind of mostly recovered, kind of miraculously. And it became really important for me to include some of that information in my program and to share what I had learned with these women because they're so the same kind of person as me that I could see them going down the same path. And ironically, through this, I met Cedar, who is a nervous system expert. I'm not interested in becoming a nervous system expert. And I wanted to bring that information to my people, and Cedar's awesome. So I invited them to, yeah, share some of their information with my people and see where we go from there. So, yeah, Cedar, if you'd like to say a little bit about yourself
Yeah,
and how you came to become a nervous system expert and a little bit about what you do, how you help people.
yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Eliane. Um, so the nervous system information that I've gathered has mostly been in the last couple of years, and I come at this mainly from a somatic point of view. So that's based in the body. There's a lot of different ways we can engage with the nervous system, and I teach pretty much all of them, but my favorite are the ones that are based in the body. So I am also considered a somatic practitioner, a somatic coach. But yeah, I came to this work through chronic fatigue syndrome as well. It was kind of the culmination of a lifetime of nervous system dysregulation, which I think we're going to talk about. But yeah, when I look back, I can see that even though I seemed healthy and I felt good and I had lots of energy, there were a lot of signs of nervous system dysregulation going back all the way to when I was a child, in particular digestive issues that I had my whole entire life, as well as some mood issues that were really severe in my teens and 20s. So, I was able to overcome those specific problems, but I still had this underlying nervous system sensitivity or dysregulation that, with enough stressors and enough triggers piled on, turned into chronic fatigue syndrome, which could also be called the cell danger response, or at least we'll get into how those two things are interconnected and related. And then I got myself out of it. I completely healed from chronic fatigue syndrome last summer. I've been backpacking, I've been traveling around Europe, I've just been having an absolute blast. It feels so good to have my health back and to actually have a whole different level of health
Yeah.
than I had before. And just like the ease of existence now when with my nervous system in a state of safety and in a state of like rest digest most of the time, it's like, oh my God, those little things that used to just set me off, or that day-to-day sense of frustration and impatience is just gone. I'm so much more in my body. Everything is just so much easier. So that's what I really love to provide people. And I do largely work with folks with chronic illness at this time. But I am starting to expand my practice into people who maybe don't have a full-blown chronic illness yet, but they can see those signs of stress and they can tell that, they're kind of heading down that road, because I would love to, prevent anyone from having the 5+ years of
Yeah.
disability.
What are some of the ways that it manifests when you
Mm,
have an activated cell danger response? So I know a big one is like CPTSD is essentially that. It's like you're like you become sensitized to all kinds of stimuli,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, that is one of the things is that you'll notice sensitivity to sound or to touch. Our pain receptors get reset so that a lot of sensations that maybe weren't interpreted as pain previously now are interpreted as pain. So we get a lot of chronic pain syndromes coming out of it. It can also manifest emotionally, so with experiences of anxiety, overwhelm, depression, those types of things. And then really common one, like I mentioned, is digestive issues. The digestive system just gets really deprioritized when that's happening. And then also issues around detoxification. So sensitivities to mold, MCAS is another common one. Immune dysfunction, so that can be autoimmune or just like catching every bug that comes around. Or the other big one is inflammation. So the cell danger response, a lot of our body's defense mechanism is creating inflammation because that actually helps us heal. But it becomes a problem when it just sticks around, and then we have chronic inflammation, and that leads to heart problems, that leads to brain fog, it leads to a whole gamut of issues. So it can manifest in a lot of different ways. And it's funny because I have a lot of people call me and they're like, can I do your program? Will it work for me? I have, and then they list their whole list of symptoms. And I'm like, every single one of those is I can be tied back to the nervous system. So I always encourage folks to get checked for other possible contributing factors. But you know, if things are coming back normal, but you still feel terrible, it's probably the nervous system. Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, I don't know if it was your video or someone else's, that lists like all the potential
Yeah, I list all the
symptoms
body
and
symptoms.
illnesses.
Yeah.
Is that yours?
Yeah, that's in my free video on my website, so folks can check that out and kind of
Okay,
see
yeah,
the
so I'll
list of
definitely
body
post that
symptoms.
in the show notes. But
Mhm.
I think it would be really cool to find, I don't know, an article or a PDF or something. Or I don't know if that's something maybe you could create of, because I think there's something about just seeing it in black and white of going like, okay, okay, I have this, I have this, I have this, that might kind of bring it home more.
Mhm.
Because I feel like it's almost hard to believe that,
Right.
wait, really? Like that can't be. Like I've been struggling, especially people who have been at it, like working on resolving, I don't know, SIBO for 5 years or 10 years to be told like, no, it's not about doing any of that. It's about, you know,
Right. And
regulating your nervous system.
it's not that the physical stuff can't help. Often it does. Like we can support our bodies in a lot of different ways, but if you're not addressing the nervous system, then like I said, it's just going to pop up in a new different way. It's not going to completely resolve if you're not getting to that really core issue.
So one thought that came up when you were talking about the pain sensitivity, like it was just we were just having a discussion about that in my clean parenting group where we have some like really highly sensitive spirited children who will just have like extreme reactions to the most like minor little thing, and
Mm.
they're like genuinely in pain. And then other times they're not. Like the same thing can happen and they're not. So would that be explained by that?
Yeah, it definitely could be because a big part of our pain receptivity, pain is actually an interpretation of sensation. It's not its own sensation. A lot of people don't realize this because if you think about it, there's so many different types of pain, right? Like you could have a throbbing pain, a sharp pain, a aching, or you know, there's many different ways that you can experience pain. This is my cat Sal. Hi Sal. Thanks for being
Sal,
involved here.
gorgeous.
He just likes attention when I'm trying to do other things.
Okay, he can be on the video too.
Yeah,
We're all inclusive here.
yeah. Um, Anyways, so pain is actually a danger signal that is being sent by our nervous system where whatever the sensory input is being interpreted by the brain as pain so that we avoid that thing. So our emotional and mental state at the time that we're experiencing it has a very significant impact on whether that stimuli is interpreted as pain or not.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of like as we were kind of talking it through in the group, I was thinking, well, like I can't relate to that in terms of physical pain, but for me, like having suffered a lot of depression, when I'm depressed, the tiniest little comment that somebody makes will just floor me. Whereas if I'm in a good place, it's like, okay, that was kind of annoying, but that's
Mhm.
it. So I was like, okay, I imagine there might like it could be the same phenomenon with physical pain.
Yeah, and
So
a lot of
that
people,
it has to do with how you're feeling in your body and your nervous system.
yeah, and like you were saying before, folks don't often understand just the degree to which our mind and body, and particular our emotions, our limbic system, and our body are informing each other constantly. If you're familiar with the vagus nerve, it's the largest nerve in the body. It's a primary part of the autonomic nervous system. We actually have 80% of the information traveling along the vagus nerve is going from the body to the brain, and 20% is going from the brain to the body. So we're constantly in this interchange of information. And based on the information coming from the body, coming from the senses around us, the nervous system is going to prioritize different things. So it's either going to prioritize healing, rest, digest, repair, detox, all of those functions that we need to do. Or it's going to prioritize mobilization, which means we're going to run away, we're going to fight something off. We've got to get all of our, big muscle groups firing and our heart pumping and all that stuff. Or it's going to prioritize shutting down and kind of disassociating. And what is also, if you read about the cell danger response, called sickness behavior. So that's where an animal, such as a human, will kind of remove itself from the group and feel, like I just don't want to be around anybody. The lights are too bright, the sound is too loud. I'm just going to curl up in a little ball and protect myself and kind of wait this out. Because evolutionarily, if someone is harboring an illness and they are just going about their normal day interacting with everyone, they're going to spread that illness throughout the group. So, right. So evolution has
Wow.
helped us out by giving that person the impetus and the desire to separate themselves, to go just be super low energy, just relax, conserve their energy that's working hard to get rid of this virus or, bacteria or whatever it is. And that is so much of what we see in CFS correlates really strongly to this sickness behavior where folks are just overwhelmed by sensory input. They can't be around people. It's hard to move. It's hard to do anything. Yeah.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah, that's a piece of the cell danger response theory. So this is a theory that comes from Dr. Navio, and his theory posits that the mitochondria, which I think we all know that's the energy centers of the cell, so they produce ATP, which fuels the cell, and so that fuels all of the body functions essentially in our body. But they also are very sensitive to any kind of changes in the cell. So they are sort of the first to notice if something's going wrong. And they will sound the alarm that there's some kind of threat. And the threat can be triggered by, maybe a virus or an invader. It could be triggered by an emotional or mental experience of stress. It could be triggered by an injury. It could be a lot of different things, but when the mitochondria decide, okay, there's some kind of threat that we're sensing here, then instead of going about their normal business producing energy, they actually kick ATP out of the cells. So that fuel that our cells need is getting pushed out of the cells as a warning signal to tell other cells, hey, there's something going on. You need to pay attention. The cell walls harden so that a virus or bacteria has a harder time infiltrating. And a lot of other physiological changes happen, such as increased inflammation, and our innate immune response starts up. So that's the non-specific immune response. That's also implicated in autoimmune conditions. So all these things happen on a cellular level that correlate quite remarkably with what I was just talking about with the nervous system and the different nervous system states that we can be in. The same thing essentially is happening in our cells, where our mitochondria are saying, hey, we need to deprioritize energy production. That's not as important as protecting the cell, making sure that we're safe, healing whatever injury is here. And I want to share a quote from a scholarly article that I was reading recently that I think puts it really succinctly. When the CDR, cell danger response, is triggered, the priorities of a multicellular organism are reset to optimize survival. These threats can be diverse as infection, poisoning, physical or psychological trauma, and still trigger the same stereotyped sickness behavior. So regardless of the trigger, the cells are going to act like, hey, the body's under threat. And this whole cascade starts, and it doesn't stop until those cells get the all clear signal, until they become convinced that we're actually safe now. So that's the missing piece with folks who end up with CFS, is that they're not getting that all clear signal that the cells can return to producing energy.
It sounds so simple.
It's a beautiful theory, and it ties everything together. Like everything you've ever learned about CFS or long COVID or fibromyalgia, it just ties it all together into one cohesive theory, and that's what I love about it. It's the one thing that makes sense.
Yeah, on the other, I tell people, like, you have no idea of comprehending what's going to be available to you on the other side of it. And it's the same, understanding the nervous system regulation and like really being able to shut down that activated self-danger response, which so many of the people like me, and I think like you, they don't really know what it's like to live without it.
Right. Yeah, we've
Like a
been
lot of us are just like
functioning.
highly
Yeah.
sensitive, and well, I guess that can get us talking about that, where like some of us do know the traumas we had. Some of the us did grow up in, obviously abusive families, or even like emotionally or narcissistically, which even though it's more subtle, you still like you have a lot of concrete examples of it when you start. It doesn't take a lot of digging to start uncovering what happened. But another big thing that for me that I experience and a lot of the people that I work with is at the beginning they say, "Oh, I had a good childhood."
Hmm.
And then as we progress through the program and they start kind of understanding what children need, they realize all that they didn't receive.
Hmm.
And then that's when I start talking to them about childhood emotional neglect, which is basically growing up in a family that lacks emotional intelligence, and like where the parents are not able to emotionally attune to children, and where there's basically not uh, it's like feelings are not talked about.
Right. Well,
So
yeah, and then there's also the nervous system aspect of that. So when we're children, we have no way of regulating our own nervous systems because our source of safety is our caregiver, right? The only source of safety in our world is our caregiver. So our nervous system is attuned to our caregiver's nervous system and is going to respond. If they're stressed, if they're in a state of responding to threat, whether or not a threat is actually there, if their nervous system believes that there's a threat, then the child is also going to believe that there is a threat. So we might be raised with parents who are incredibly attentive and very loving, but their nervous systems, because of their own trauma, because of their, family's history, maybe ancestral trauma, their nervous systems are in this heightened state of arousal where they're essentially running in a threat response, like we were just talking about, without realizing it. Then the kid is growing up with that as if they're in an unsafe home because their parents' nervous systems are responding to threat and they assume, or their nervous system, not this, none of this is happening consciously. Let's be clear
Right.
about that. It's all completely on an unconscious level and it's not by choice. So this is a survival response that we don't get to choose or intentionally decide that we're going to be activated or not. We just have to work with the nervous system. But this understanding, I mean, the cell danger response theory is very, very new. The understanding of the nervous system is very new. So, of course, most of our parents didn't have these tools to self-regulate, let alone to help their kids learn how to regulate. So we grow up with nervous systems attuned to threat, even though there wasn't a real threat in the home. There may as well have been because that's what our nervous systems are primed for and programmed for, essentially.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd never considered that piece. I mean, I was very aware of how, children just reflect whatever the parents are feeling. So
Mhm.
I mean, that's a lot of my work with parents is really working on meeting their own needs and becoming aware of what's going on in their bodies and taking care of themselves so that they can live within their window of tolerance. And then
Mhm.
the children's reactions automatically shift. And again, they're like, I don't understand what's happening.
It's the nervous system. We
And it's like,
mirror whatever nervous
they're
systems are around.
like people say that all the time. I don't understand. Like so many of my situations have disappeared and I'm not doing anything differently. And I'm like, yeah, no, but you're showing up differently. Like
Mhm.
it's not about what you're doing. Like the
Right.
words and the actions are not that much. It's so much more about the energy that's behind it and yeah, the state of the nervous system.
Yeah. I love that you're doing this work, Eliane, because I think that kids are going to be so much better off to have this understanding or for their parents to have this understanding that we just, previous generations just didn't have the benefit of knowing about this stuff. I also just want to
Um
add about nervous system regulation that a lot of people think that means you have to always be in the safety state or the parasympathetic state. But we actually need all of the different nervous system states to be available to us because, if we're going for a run, we've got to get those muscle groups activated. We need some of that sympathetic energy. Or if we want to sit down and meditate or go to sleep, we need some of that shutdown energy. So regulation is really just about, do we have the flexibility to move between those states appropriately for our environment rather than getting stuck in responding to a threat that's not even there.
yeah, or being thrown in it without our
Yeah,
without
being
it being
triggered.
appropriate or
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so can you talk a little bit about what's needed to turn down the cell danger response and to live in from a regulated place overall?
Yeah, great question. We need to practice safety because we've been practicing threat for years, maybe decades, maybe our whole life in a lot of cases. So we're incredibly attuned to threat. And that's our kind of our natural state, and that's where we get stuck. So we have to practice safety. And it's not a quick, it's not like flipping a switch, right? We have to just increase our ability to experience safety slowly over time. And the way I like to do that primarily is with somatic tools. So, maybe we even do a couple on this call of just little subtle things that we can do that our body understands to mean safety. So just practicing those over and over. And then the other thing that I think is important is there are often underlying beliefs that maybe come from childhood trauma or just our families of origin or just our culture, even because there's a lot of toxic stuff in our culture that create stress internally, like either an internal battle, internal feelings of shame or just not being enough, or I have to do this, this, and this, that are going to push you into that stress response, even if you're practicing safety. So that's why in my 5 keys program, I combine both, where we're doing a lot of like deep inner reflection of like, what is driving me and is it serving me? And then at the same time, we're practicing giving ourselves those experiences of feeling safe, of getting to rest and really like caring for ourselves. So yeah, I think it's just a practice. We have to practice safety over and over and over until that becomes as easy as threat.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one thing. It's my life is so sped up since I kind of recovered that I'm kind of forgetting what I was doing in the fall that kind of brought me to this point. But I remember at some point just like looking in the Facebook group about like all the different things that people were doing to bring safety to their body and like picking and choosing which were the ones that I enjoyed, that I would do regularly, that felt like they were effective for me, and then just doing those like
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly. That and meditation, that was another
Mm-hmm.
thing that for me did help me. Even though I resisted it. But I was like, at some point, I was desperate enough that I signed up for a program and she really emphasized meditation. And I was like, well, whatever. I just got to do something. So I'm going to just trust her for the duration of the program and do it. And like this time, learning to do it and to just like access a place that was peaceful
Mm-hmm.
where like my body could then kind of relax because I was not like stuck in it, but could kind of
Yeah.
rise above or around it, like create that space around it where my body could just yeah.
That's a great way to put it. And there's different programs out there that emphasize different tools. Like you can show yourself safety by imagining yourself in a positive situation that feels safe. So that's very like mentally based, like top down. Similar with meditation by just going into like a meditative state of calm. That can create a sense of safety. Or you can use these body-based tools where you're using kind of like our physical responses to threat and safety to show the body that it's safe, which would be the somatics. So there's a lot of different ways to get at it, and different people are going to respond better to different ones. Like I tried the top down approach and it did basically nothing for me. I mean, I learned good stuff, but it did not. Telling myself that I'm safe and imagining that I'm in a positive situation is like it feels nice, but it doesn't actually penetrate on the level that I needed it to. Whereas for some folks that is really effective. So you have to try these different things and just see
Yeah.
what works for you.
Yeah, I was just thinking I would love to create like a resource with all different kinds of ideas and maybe like categories. Because for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was almost the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but like I'd been doing somatic work for 20 some years. So I can do that in my sleep, you know? But the top down, that was missing for me. But anyway, so I would go on walks, or then like when I started having more energy, I started like playing music and just
Mm-hmm.
dancing a little bit and singing as I was cooking. My heart would start racing, my whole nervous system would get activated, and I would just go like, okay, I know this is new, like we haven't done this for a while, but you're okay. Like look around. Like you're not doing anything significant. It's just a little bit of movement and there's music. And then boom, my nervous system calmed down. I was like, how did that just happen? And then I could dance 2 songs. So
Yeah, that's
so yeah, I
awesome.
think it does depend too on what, I don't know, what you need. And I mean, I think that's one of the challenges to it is it does seem like there's I don't know, approaches or solutions or practices.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
think it's
different
good
people
to have,
resonate with different ones.
yeah, it's good, and it's good to have a variety of tools that you know work for you or that work in different situations, and then you can be responsive to what's present in the moment. Like, do I need to do a body scan? Do I just need to do a little bit of deep breathing? Do I need to tell myself a kind message? Do I need to do a 30-minute meditation? Like, it could be so many different things, but if you're
Yeah.
responding to what you really need, that creates, I mean, that's a huge thing for creating safety, is building that trust with the body of like, oh, I'm listening
Yeah.
to you now. I'm not just going to ignore you.
Yeah. And I do remember at some point reading in the group something about like at some point it becomes intuitive. And I was
Hmm.
like that sounded like a dream to me, you know, that I would get to the point where I would just know what my body needed.
Yeah.
Like it felt utopic. But then I got it. Then it started happening. And I was like, and then it's like, you know yourself on a level that you didn't even know
Mhm.
you could know yourself.
Yeah.
And then it's like taking care of yourself becomes like a non-thing because it's so automatic and organic.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's really, yeah, it's really remarkable. So yeah, I feel like as passionate as I am about telling people that parenting can be easy and just commit yourself to it and you have no idea what's possible on the other side of it. I feel the same way about this. It's like for
Mm.
those of us who suffer from illnesses that from so many illnesses. I mean, even if you're not sure if that's the cause of it, even just going to address this, like do the
Mhm.
nervous system work and address the cell
It
danger
can only
response, you
benefit
have
you.
nothing to
Yeah.
lose.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe your illness is not going to completely go away, but your life will probably be changed anyway from doing
Exactly.
it. Anything else you feel like my people should know in terms of their own well-being and health and in terms of their children's well-being and health?
I think one thing I just want to emphasize is to not be ashamed about your nervous system responses. I think it's it's so common for us to go to shame places, especially as parents. I'm not personally a parent, but I see this in other people of, you know, I've been doing it wrong, I've screwed up my kids, or, all those kinds of things. And I just want to emphasize that our survival responses are not our choice. We don't get a say in whether we fawn or freeze or flee or fight. Those are calculations that are made on our behalf without our knowledge, and because it has to happen faster than we can consciously choose, right? If it's going to save our life, it has to happen instantly, right?
Instantaneously, yeah.
And it does save our life. So I really just honor all of these survival responses and all of these survival states. I don't demonize any of them. It's just a matter of getting to know them and befriending them, and then having more agency and choice, because once we understand them, then we can determine, like, okay, is this the energy I need right now? Or is it not? In which case, I'm going to use my tools and I'm going to shift it. And I think that when you start to do that for yourself, it just opens up a lot of possibilities. And like you said, the kids are going to respond to that because their nervous systems are just in lockstep with their parents' nervous systems, essentially.
I really like that. Yeah, I mean, I say it differently, but yeah, I kind of pound that on parents for a whole 3 months, which I think is part of why there's such a transformation. Because for being told for 3 months every day, "No, you're good," like, the only reason you did this is because your needs were not met, and it's just about being kinder and being better at
Mhm.
taking care of your own needs and remembering you are innately good, so if you react in this way, there's a reason. There's a
Yeah.
valid reason. It just comes from unmet needs. And it's just about taking better care of yourself, not becoming more patient and not being better at pushing through. Like, forget that shit. Like, I had somebody cry, I think, in my group this past week when I said, no, I don't want you to be more patient. I want you to learn to be less patient. And it's just like the permission, that
Mhm.
it's like you don't have to keep like muscling through and like
Right.
pushing harder and trying harder to be
Mm.
different. And like, it's not
Yeah.
sustainable and doesn't serve anybody.
Mm.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, anything else that you feel like people should know or that would be helpful if you think of who my peeps are?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would say is that we've just barely scratched the surface today, obviously. It's such a deep topic. I do have a video that's about 40 minutes and a PDF guide that talks a little more about the different survival states and how to recognize when you're in one of them, or if you've been in one chronically, maybe for a long time. And that's a free resource. So I would encourage folks to check that out if you think that that might be in play for you. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, and I'll post all that info
great.
in my in the show notes or whatever they're called on YouTube
Mhm.
video comments description. And yeah, I highly recommend that. I mean, if you resonate with Cedar, I know I really, really enjoyed watching that. And then if people are interested in working with you,
Mhm.
can you give them an idea of the different ways that you work with people?
Yeah, so depending on when you're watching this, I have a program that's about to start March 7th that is going to be a really deep dive into those kind of really deep beliefs and programming that can be driving a survival response. Plus, we're going to do a ton of somatic work, guided visualizations. We're going to sing a bunch of songs. It's honestly really fun, but it's essentially how do we access a healing state? So uh, it's going to be a lot of folks with chronic illness, but the program itself is relevant to everyone. And then I also do group coaching and one-on-one coaching, and that can look like coaching around a specific illness or health situation that you're dealing with, or it can look more generally like a somatic practitioner session, which is where we really work on the mind body connection, which can be really powerful for folks too.
And can you just say a little bit more about when you say your one-on-one sessions, when you do it more general, the mind-body
Mhm.
connection? Do you want to just describe a little bit like what that looks like?
Yeah. Yeah, so we start those ones I typically work over a period of sessions, like we'll do like at least 3 or 4 together. And we start by just connecting to a resource of safety, whatever that is for you. So finding your unique tool for safety, essentially. And I have a lot of tools that I can share, but what's best is to find like what is really going to resonate with that individual person and like create that feeling of like just being, wrapped in a blanket by someone that you totally trust and love. So we find that, and then once we have that as our kind of solid rock or base to return
Or
to, then we can explore what else is here. What else is here in the body? Are there emotions? Are there chronic patterns of physical tension? Is there trauma? I'm not a therapist, but somatic work can help with situations that were traumatic. So we just gently touch into those, and we always are able to return to that state of safety. So it just gives those patterns or experiences a place to relax and often really just unravel and let go. So that's work that I'm newer to, but it's really exciting to me right now. So,
cool. Well, yeah. Thank you for explaining that. I feel like it gives a sense of yeah, what that might look like. And I mean, what strikes me hearing you talking about it is just how gentle it is. Which, I
Extremely
mean, you
gentle.
are so like you have such a gentle. I know I keep telling you that, but like there's just something so gentle about your energy. And I know that, like, especially for people who have had a lot of trauma and who have not felt safe, sometimes like they can only handle so much.
Yeah, yeah, it is important with
And like
somatic work
what
to
you
go
provide
slow.
seems like such a
Yeah.
gentle, almost like initiation to doing healing work.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's a very different very different way of doing healing work because we don't go into the stories. We don't need to talk about what happened or what didn't happen or whatever. We just need to notice what is here right now. And because that's where what we want to change, right?
Yeah.
We don't care about, or I mean, maybe we would like to change what happened in the past, but that's not possible. What we can change is our present moment experience and how it affects us going forward. So that's where the real opportunity for growth and transformation is, I think, in the present moment and in the body.
Yeah.